This is November 21st, 7:10 p.m. That's Robert Kiyosaki. He's comment. It's interesting to me. I'm not. I'm old, but somehow I'm aware of what Kiyosaki isn't aware of because of being in the arts and entertainment business. So none of this Sam Bankman-Fried FTX surprises me at all. It's exactly what I would have expected from who these guys, and knowing people exactly like Fried and their sex cult and everything else is $33 million. So it's interesting to me to hear the $33 million house in the Bahamas. So it's interesting to me to hear Kiyosaki be surprised by this. And so here we go.
Prior thought. And then when I found out they're all having group sex, I'm going, oh my God, you couldn't pay me to jump in that group sex. I mean, God almighty, it can't get much worse. And then you have this guy Fetterman wins the Senate against Dr. Oz, who's a good-looking guy. I mean, America is turning into central casting for the Addams family.
Yeah.
And then in Arizona, they can't even count the votes. Oh my God. And then this guy, I'm not really Republican or Democrat. It's your choice. You vote if you want to. Biden wins the election sitting in his basement, and Trump is on the road, millions of people cheering him on. And Biden sits in his basement while his son Hunter is cutting deals in China, taking nude pictures with him with hookers. I'm going, what has happened to America? Holy mackerel. And now SBF, he just wants the frosting. I mean, he and his goofy looking girlfriend going, and they're having group sex. I'm going, you got to be kidding me. If I had $1 billion, I'd hire something better looking than that. You know what I mean? I'm not into that stuff, but my God, it's gotten strange looking.
Well, it's certainly drug fueled for sure, right? Caroline, the CEO of Alameda, which is his girlfriend, had talked about their amphetamine use and how being so strung out on amphetamines makes it very hard to deal with normal people or sober people. And so they were strung out on drugs. They were, dealing with billions of dollars. Publicly, he said that he was doing this all for the good of humanity. He was donating 100% of his money. He drove a Toyota Corolla, and it was all lies. He lived in like a $30 million mansion in the Bahamas. Had another big house in New York. They were spending money like it was going out of style. So it was all a big lie, all a big charade.
I'll just interject for a second. What astounds me with it, they don't know the name Bill Clinton. I mean, they didn't know anything about Epstein Island. They didn't know about the Andy Warhol crowd. There was amphetamines. That's exactly what is the drug of choice of sex cults. And, degeneracy. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're screwing a Barbie doll or a dog. When you're on all of these drugs and you have all this money, you're just in a fantasy world. An AI robot will do just the trick. So it's very strange to me, listening to these, and they have some idea that these elections are real. They also have some kind of, I mean, how long have the elections been fixed? Going back, I'm reading the Johnny Rosselli biography. Johnny Rosselli was for whoever doesn't know, he's one of the connecting tissue mobsters going back to California to Hollywood. He's a Hollywood mobster. He's in the Capone gang, the Detroit mafia, the Florida mafia. He was hired as an assassin by the CIA to hit Castro for the Kennedy administration, though Kennedy didn't know about it apparently, but who knows? Because all you have is one department after another that are all at war with each other. The FBI is going after the CIA because they're running Rosselli and Santos Trafficante. They all this comes out during the church committee hearing. So why doesn't anybody know about it? That's, I'm astounded. Well, because we're in this Orwellian world where everything's down the memory hole. Everybody's too fixated with whatever the news is of today. Ukraine is a completely fictitious war. Sam Bankman-Fried, guess what? He's going to appear with Janet Yellen, the Federal Reserve, Mark Zuckerberg, the New York Times. It's a Democratic slush fund. His father's having a legislation written for Elizabeth Warren. Who doesn't know this stuff? You know, the New York Times is the one promoting all of it, promoting FTX. And he's a big advertiser. So Kramer on CNBC, like everything else, he's gotten every other stock pick wrong, Meta, you name it. Is anything he's promoting is a complete fraud or that collapses. How do they keep their jobs? Well, Americans don't notice, I guess. I don't know why anybody watches these programs. I'm happy to watch Kiyosaki or this guy he has on, Mark Moss, who described how they created this cryptocurrency fraud by they create their own market. The sex cult are all, you know, playing around buying the cryptocurrencies from each other. This is how the art market works. You know, that's how I recognize it. This is how the art market worked in the late 19th century. It's called having an auction ring. That's all Saatchi was running, was auction rings. You have inside investors, and where do they sit? How about on the corporate boards of all the museums? That's who owns the art. They get in first call. Then what do? Oh, they give retrospectives to Schnabel and every single one of them, David Sally. You even know the names now. Probably 90% of them, everybody forgets. But, you know, they're graduate students. They make this total crap, complete crap, even worse than Jackson Pollock and Mark Rothko. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can get anybody, you know, oh, I do bronzed tennis shoes, you know, that I sit on my head and I stand in a corner. Oh, that would be Gilbert and George, you know, the original human statues. And then Tilda Swinton is the nude, you know. You said there's a guy in the 70s that masturbated underneath steps, and you could hear him masturbating. He's fantasizing. You go into the gallery. It's a shit show. It's been a shit show for 60, 70 years. It's not like, I guess it can get worse in the sense that now people run these kind of scams. I was watching these people who would listen to a guy like, you know, he's in shorts and a t-shirt. He's an obvious phony. Musk figured him out at one meeting. I mean, it's not well, it will be the same people that are buying all the forged abstract expressionist masterpieces that were being created by a Chinese guy out in Queens in his garage. You know, here's a Jackson Pollock, send it over to Knoedler Gallery, which is one of the oldest, most established, going back to the late 19th century, early 20th century in New York City, and is selling all the modern, contemporary American masters, all this stuff that anybody can make in their garage. So they have a Chinese guy make them. It put Knoedler's out of business because no longer exists, because it was, I don't know, what does it take to catch somebody doing that? And this, you know, it's, everybody thinks the geniuses at the head of the cultural pyramid don't know if they can recognize, you know, Grandma Moses. I get, you know, what in the world are we running here in America but a complete fraud and a complete scam? I'll let Kiyosaki talk about it more. I mean, all that strikes me is here's an older guy that's been seeing it. Apparently, but he acts like he's surprised. Like, this is, I can't believe this is happening. It's like, yeah, it's only been happening for 50 years now. Here we go.
It sounds like Black Lives Matter. You know, they own the biggest houses in Topanga Canyon and Beverly Hills and all that stuff, and they help the poor blacks. I'm going, what has happened to our country? I'm not against black people. I'm against fraud and lies.
Yeah.
But they get away with it. We can't even count votes here in Arizona.
Yeah,
We cannot
it's
even,
insane.
and the Secretary of State, who was in charge of the last election, Katie Hobbs, she's going to verify her own election now. I mean, give me a break. What has happened, Mark?
After she sent out all those ballots that didn't have her opponent's name on them.
Oh, God. Oh, God. How is this happening?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get into what you found out about my buddy, Sam Bankman-Fried, and his girlfriend of Alameda, or whatever they are. What were they up to?
So I think it's really important from people, because I've made a couple of posts on Twitter lately, and people don't understand where I'm coming from because they don't understand how this fraud actually works. So I think it's important to start there. So this cryptocurrency boom has been brought on by greedy speculators. And so what happens? So basically, Sam Bankman-Fried has two companies, one called FTX, which is the exchange where you can buy and sell them all. And he has another company called Alameda. And Alameda is something called a market maker, or you could call them a faker or a manipulator. So market makers trade on thinly traded volume to artificially create a price. So what happens is, and Sam Bankman-Fried actually gave an interview, and it's on Bloomberg. It was in April of this year. And he breaks all this down. Let's say that you create this box. It's just a box. You say it's going to change the world, but all is it a box? And then you put tokens in and take tokens out. And so then this market maker starts trading this volume on very, very thin liquidity to artificially create a market cap. So they take 100,000 tokens, they take 2% of them, and they quickly trade them, wash trade them back and forth between themselves to then say these tokens are worth $2, $5, $100. And then you say, well, $100 token times the total market cap gives it $1 billion. So they create $1 billion of potential value out of thin air. And then what happens, and he describes it in this interview, is then because they've made this market and they've made this token look like it's growing in value and it's worth all this money, then they list it on FTX, and all these people want to start trading it because they perceive it as having value, the value they gave it artificially. And so then everyone starts trading it, and then FTX makes all the money off these unsuspecting people trading a bunch of worthless garbage.
And
see, now that's just another version of what is done in the art world. It's just the same thing. They have all this worthless garbage that they get from some graduate student. And Saatchi, who's Saatchi? That's who created all the young British artists, all these Elephant Dung, Virgin Mary, and, Piss Christ, and all this rubbish. But it all is political, you see. It's to turn the Democratic Party to give everybody what they want, which is a lot of degenerate sex, and to be anti-Christian, because the Republicans are Christians and you hate the Christians. See, because they are the morals police. They're not really the morals police. They're just as immoral. I mean, look at who's out on Epstein Island. It's an equal opportunity. It's what about Prince Andrew? What about Dershowitz? What about Kenneth Starr, the Republican prosecutor for the Clinton trial? He's the one who got the Epstein off the charges in the first Epstein trial, so Epstein could go on with his sex slave operation for another, 8, 9 years? So Kenneth Starr is a real moral superstar, right? The Republicans are just as sleazy behind the scenes as the Democrats are. They have all the same kind of Christian rock music, and Led Zeppelin is playing at the Andy Stanley Church. It's a sea of sewage, is what America has turned into. But it's always been that. It's always been that. He's talking about BLM, right? Yeah, I knew they were frauds because so were the Black Panthers. What were the Black Panthers doing with the money? And who was supporting the Black Panthers? The liberals, the New York Review of Books liberals, the Lenny Bernstein liberals. Radical Chic, it was called. Tom Wolfe, the gonzo journalist, wrote all about it. He saw through the fraud, and he was called a fascist and all the same bullshit, right? The fascists are the people that are totalitarians and that corrupt the democratic process through all this vote manipulation and voter fraud. Why? It's bizarre to me because Kiyosaki, this has been happening for decades now. I mean, what election hasn't been a matter of wink, wink, nod, nod? Gore won the election with Bush. After they 2 years later or so, when the count came in, after they'd gone through the hanging chads and all that, and he never challenged it, right? Because it's like the mafia. It's like you pick the. So I hope I'm not like disturbing anybody's peace of mind to think that to tell you that the Federal Reserve isn't your greatest friend, and to tell you that the central bankers. Let me just put it this way: right now, what's going on is more gold has been bought by the central bank in America than has been bought since the '60s. So what they're doing is hoarding gold, adding to their gold stores. Where they stole gold from Afghanistan and from Iraq. There's, what do people think these wars are about? Do they think, oh, it's to bring democracy? Yeah, sure. No blood for oil. Anybody remember that slogan? Oh, there was a couple percent of the population maybe that were saying that. The OWS people or and then as soon as they get their Democrats in there, they go back to the same thing of let's tear down the government. Where's our socialism? Well, now it's being delivered. See, now it's called a digital currency. It's called you will own nothing. That's communism. That's what Klaus Schwab has promised. So that's what we're getting. Lots of people know this. I mean, I'm not the only person saying this. I guess maybe the art community doesn't know it, or the Democratic voters don't know it. The ones who voted for Fetterman, but am I allowed to say that I don't trust the electoral process without being, how big brothered out is the situation now that nobody can question the truth from the truth ministry that's the CIA and the FBI, which is the National Security State, the NSA, and they're all private contractors. It's just a big mafia operation. They started contracting the mafia guys. That's what the Rosselli biography is all about. They start, Howard Hughes had his own FBI guy. They're creating sex tapes. They're creating. Everybody saw The Godfather, right? Remember how they get a photograph of the congressman in bed with the hooker or what? Now they do it. You can have actors play Sukarno, right, in Indonesia, president with a hooker. You drum up the Trump with Russian prostitute story by Hillary Clinton. When are they ever going to be prosecuted? Never. I mean, I hate to break anybody's bubble. I mean, I break the hearts of these little kids out there that are, in tears over global warming. But good luck with that one. You're going to glue yourself to the wall, or you're going to lay down in front of traffic, and that's going to make the corporations say, "Oh, we better stop polluting. We better stop." It has nothing to do with global warming. Global warming is just climate change. It happens. It's not human caused. Real scientists know this. Back in the 70s, they were calling for a freeze, that we were going to have a global winter, that the world was freezing to death. Back then, they also said that Albuquerque was sitting atop a sea of water. Underneath that, it was a huge and limitless aquifer under Albuquerque. That's so they could get intel in there and poison the water of the residents. And the Rio Grande is, you can practically walk across the Great River, and Lake Mead is all dried up. And now they're finding the bodies that Chicago gangsters have dumped into Lake Mead, because that's near Las Vegas. See, not just Chicago gangsters, just gangsters, period. That's where Johnny Rosselli, whose biography I'm reading, ends up. He ends up and with his legs cut off and decomposed body out in the waters off Florida, where he's in retirement. The others are murdered. The others, why are they murdered? It could be an old grudge. The Kennedy conspirators are saying, oh, it's because he was going to talk. There's nothing to talk about. We already know what happened. We few, I guess, the illustrious few. Here's a good recommended book. Put it on your book list. Handsome Johnny. The light has got it. It's like Handsome Johnny, the life and death of Johnny Rosselli, gentleman gangster, Hollywood producer, CIA assassin. It's a page turner. It's not so difficult to know because this is written in like 2017 or something like that. I remember reading the conspiracy stuff. It was thin on the ground. You had some congressional testimony, but all these guys, as they've aged, the stories have, even the Manson case. News has come out with this Tom Foley, I guess his name is, book. This is outside my main concern, which is spiritual, which is religious. That's why I'm seeing this. I see this stuff as the battle between good and evil, which is where all this drug activity is, and the mafia activity. It's evil. It's money. It's money, 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 money. That's why all these things are going on. And even these financial guys, they're obsessed with money. All they think about all day in and day out is money. Kiyosaki, it just said, like he said, what are you going to do with the money? It's just a game. I mean, at one point he said he was listening to him on another broadcast, and I'm understanding the structure of it. I've always understood the structure of it. I understood it in '08, and Michael Burry is the Big Short guy, Burry, Burry, and he called the cryptocurrency crash, and a few days ago he's called the stock market crash and the housing market crash, and duh, but Americans will just keep, because of the greed factor, they can't pull, they keep thinking they're going to make more money. They're going to buy on the dips. They're going to, the stocks are going to go up. Just stay the course, like George Bush said. You see how stay the course always works. Just keep the iceberg, is dead ahead. Stay the course. Oh, there's a cliff up ahead and we're going 80 miles per hour. Just stay the course. The road's out. There's red lights. There's red lights. We can jump it. Evil Knievel here. We'll go right over the Grand Canyon. And it's the end of the road for America. And there's only a spiritual reality that has to be faced for people that are plugged into this. I'm gonna be one of the immortals with Albert Pike in the temple, the immortal temple of the gods, or I'm gonna be my third eye is gonna open, and I'm gonna be reincarnated as a butterfly, and I'm a beautiful person like John Lennon and Yoko Ono. We're just gonna imagine it worked for them. Yeah, it didn't really work for John, did it? And it didn't really work for Yoko because the immortal art of Yoko. Well, also there's a bit of tidbit of information about John and Yoko. Is their big retrospective in upstate was New York, and New York was arranged by a CIA guy who was running the Nicaragua operation. It's all documented. And David Ross, was the head of the Whitney Museum of American Art and the Whitney program. Drugs, money, politics, national security state, prison industrial complex, all of these wars, all of this sexy entertainment, it all goes to the same thing. It all goes to the dark prince. It all goes to the father of lies and murderer, who's a murderer. So murder, she wrote, the murder rooms, red rum. There's murder rooms, snuff films. You know, it's not wanting to see what's at the end of all of this money trail. No great fortune without a great crime, great crimes, and the whole Friedman uh, Bankman-Fried FTX was a slush fund for the Democratic Party. It's pushed by the New York Times. Janet Yellen and Mark Zuckerberg and Bankman-Fried are all going to be together on a panel before this blows up. It's the other one. Jeff Bezos runs the Washington Post, Rupert Murdoch. The Wall Street Journal, there we are this morning, they're talking about the big victory. Once again, Ukraine is winning the war. Once again, the Russians don't know what to do. They're just waiting for the ground to freeze, and then they're going to roll up into Ukraine and put an end to this farce of a war. And America is ending up completely isolated. In the G20 that's just got through, you have the BRICS countries all holding hands together. That's it for a photo op at the end of it. And Joe Biden is like the dunce or whatever, except on NPR or the American news. So then everybody's listening to Joe Biden. It's like, yeah, like OPEC was. And they've stopped listening to Joe Biden. NATO doesn't want anything to do with him. The countries are making their separate deals with the economic power in Europe, which is Russia now, so they can get heating oil. That's just how it is. I'm not anti-American. I'm not anti-patriotic. I've never considered myself an American. I've never considered myself a Canadian. My mom was Canadian. My dad was American. And I'm a crazy mixed up kid. I see this neo-fascism is what you have in Canada, and neo-fascism is what you have here. This isn't who could imagine this as a democracy? I don't know. Or get excited about Tweedledee and Tweedledum, Fetterman or Dr. Oz? Well, that's a hell of a choice. Because the same thing of the war, that we're just throwing money away and trying to create the illusion that we're feared. Russia doesn't fear America. Why would they fear America? The only thing that people fear is we're going to, drop a nuclear bomb on somebody like we did in the Second World War. And that's entirely possible. I don't think it's going to happen, but like I say, that it's entirely possible because there's only one way you're going to win the war. That's what Ukraine keeps trying to do, is drop bombs on a nuclear power station and bring NATO in, bring the other countries in, get Russia to react. But Russia is not reacting. So far, they just are completely restrained and staying with the plan they've always had, which was simply to take back the countries that Ukraine was bombing that are called now in the Russian Federation. These territories that are traditionally ethnically Russian, and the people inside those territories want to be inside the Russian state, Mother Russia, particularly because and there's war crimes going on. Even the New York Times has to recognize what was reported by the Russians, that these Russian prisoners were taken out and shot in the back of the head by Ukrainians. This is the Azov Brigade Battalion, or the kind of people that this coming in to fight in this army. Like this isn't a disciplined army so much as it's a lot of mercenaries that are out to settle a score from the Chechens or the Poles or whomever. So it's a bloodbath with no particular purpose, just like Vietnam was or Iraq or anything else. Afghanistan. What's the end game here? There is no end game. It's just to profiteer. It's just to make money. Like I say, what was the Roman Empire? What was their end game? World domination. We want world domination. So we say Russia wants to dominate the world. China wants to dominate. No, they're in trade alliances with the BRICS, the Brazil, with Russia, with China, with India, with South Africa. They want trading relationships. They don't want to be at war. What good does it do Russia to be at war with Europe? That's their market. So at the end of the day, all we're going to have is to be completely isolated from the rest of the world. Our currency is going to evaporate. Then we're going to get the digital currency system. Kamala, whatever her name is, and it's the Obama administration that are responsible for this complete disaster. It's a global disaster. What Kiyosaki's not pointing out, I don't know, maybe he doesn't know. It's the same administration that's been, it's a permanent government. And the permanent government is integrated now, the media, the military industrial complex, the war profiteers, and the advertisers. FTX was a big advertiser. So, like Archer Daniel Midland on NPR, like the Gates, the Melinda and Bill Gates foundations, and all these people who just want to benefit mankind. You're in such good hands with the pharmaceutical companies and the agribusiness and the military industrial complex and the prison industrial system. And so what are they going to do? Oh, it's MAGA terrorists. That's who you have to worry about. We have to get assault weapons off the street. Yeah, that's not anything that's going to result in a beautiful, peaceful world. Sorry to burst anybody's bubble. That there isn't any logic at all to giving the same speech for the last 25 years. And what's the result of the speech? People go out and they know this is going to be the result of this speech because it's happened every time. People go out and buy all the ammo and weapons that they possibly can. And they hide them where they put them, or they buy them off the street or what have you. I'm watching gas stations be robbed, and these guys, oh, they're black guys. Sorry, I'm not a racist. I'm just describing that these are black gangsters, the Crips and the Bloods, or whomever they are, right? What are we supposed to pretend there isn't any black violence? There isn't any black on white violence? Or there isn't any black on Asian violence or black on black violence? Oh, because that's not politically correct. We're supposed to pretend that we live in some bizarre woke fantasy world. So these guys have they've got assault rifles, automatic weapons. They break into a gas station. They're just shooting at who are they shooting at? Another gang. It's just gang warfare. It's like Capone, except it's black gangs in that case. Or it could be the Hispanic gangs or the Mexican gangs or the Colombian gangs or the Cuban gangs or it's just, we're back to full on mafia, which is how it all started. So we're in an anarchic situation because of who else? The Democratic Party. Sorry, that's who unleashed all of this stuff by not accepting the results of an American election and saying we're going to take this into our own hands with the help of the media that we control and the help of the Federal Reserve Bank, and everybody's just going to be fleeced like the sheep they are, including myself. I don't put myself, I'm not any smarter than anybody else. I don't have a vested interest in it. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's like I've finally gotten nauseated by it enough to just want to, like Jesus said, or like God says, to come out of Babylon. Come out of Babylon. That's my philosophy, and it's a spiritual philosophy. And I don't want to be part of, this Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh sex cults, or Rinpoche, Chogyam, or the homosexual cults around Allen Ginsberg. Just reading in the Rosselli book, guess who Allen Ginsberg is embracing when Castro was in New York? Allen Ginsberg. Give him a big bear hug and a big embrace after he's taken over Cuba. That's wonderful, with a violent revolution. So that's what they all want. That's the whole point of communism. It's a violent revolution. China, Pol Pot, North Korea, you name it. So now we have our violent revolution, and now we have communism. And communism is a central command economy. So they decide we're going to get rid of the oil industry and we're going to get electric cars. And gee, who's going to benefit from that? Well, Nancy Pelosi and her husband and all the people who have get the stock before Congress passes the legislation where certain companies are going to be subsidized. So it's just an insider racket. Now, if the truth is printed about Paul Pelosi, we're going to fire the guy on NBC who actually inadvertently reported the truth, thinking, this is what the police said. And who knows what happened? I mean, maybe the police banged him upside the head because he thought he was robbing the house. They didn't know where they were. This is Keystone Cops, folks. It's Keystone Cops. Oh, and there's an LGBTQ plus club where people are shot, and it's a hate crime. Well, every crime is a hate crime. Any crime where you're shooting people, that's a hate crime, right? But, this is a special hate crime? And so how do we know who this guy was? I mean, it was an Islamic fundamentalist that shot up the club in Orlando, killing some 40 people. So, but that isn't a hate crime because it doesn't fit the profile of, whatever the media selects as hate crime groups of the day. They become on the list of protected groups. And it has to be a MAGA supporter. It has to be a MAGA supporter, or a white person who even knows anymore what's what, or what's real or what isn't real, because it's all scripted. The elections are scripted. Everything else, it's a fake reality. So what's real? God and Jesus are real. That's why Jesus says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and the only way to the Father is through me, is through the Son." So if you hear the truth, then that's somebody who is, at least at that moment, is following God by speaking the truth. People lying, they're following the dark cult. That's lying is one of the breaking the commandments, coveting your neighbor's wife, or slandering your neighbor, or gossip. All of this stuff is of the devil. So all we have is the national media that just prints National Enquirer type news without any basis in fact anyway. That's what really shifted, and I go back to 2016, but when it really hit was starting with the Trump election. And then all of a sudden, you get nothing but some prostitute comes out with a story, or Kavanaugh's, somebody has sex groping around while they're drunk in a closet or whatever it is. All of a sudden, it's a sexual assault charge, and there's no witnesses when she didn't report it at the time. When it's awfully fuzzy story. But let's make that the heart of without any corroborating evidence, at the time and or over time. And so it's as soon as you make up a story that fits the narrative that this person's a victim of the white male patriarchy who happens to be of the wrong political party and has the wrong political points of view, then they're naturally a rapist, or they're naturally being urinated on by Russian prostitutes. And trading. You know, what's the other charge? The quid pro quo. Well, that was Joe Biden with the quid pro quo, or colluding with Russia. Well, that was the Democratic National Committee colluding with Russia. But we don't want to look at the unfortunate reality of being in the hands of a police state that's so. This is the Orwellian part. I don't know if anybody read 1984 or recalls it when they saw the movie. But Orwell was talking about the communist dictatorship, and that's what we have for all intents and purposes. And Goldstein, Emmanuel Goldstein, who's always a threat to the state, and you never see him. There's just a picture of him. That's Trump's role. Whatever evil happens, it's Goldstein. It's Emmanuel Goldstein, and hate, 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 hate. Oh, you know, or combine it with Putin, because of course Goldstein, Trump is colluding with Russia to destroy, with the other evil dictator there, to destroy the United States. He has world ambitions. Well, I'd say since we started a war now, that will be the ambition, if you want to call it that, to win the war of these other states that we've declared war against. I don't know. You know, somebody should be taking a look at that. Who's a military strategist, that we have these completely, you have incompetent bureaucracies where people go to the top by being yes people. It's like the yes men, these satirists that were corporate yes men. You know, you just say whatever the boss says, yes, yes, I agree, yes, we should do that, yes. You go to war with Russia, yes, good idea, yes, we can win. Oh, who do we have? We have this circus clown, Zelensky. He's an Italian, whatever. He's Lithuanian. He worked in the circus and he's an oligarch. You know, you don't have any background on the guy other than the fact that Zelensky was a comedian on TV. So that's good enough. It was good enough for Ronald Reagan, you know, who was a comedian on TV. It's good enough for Arnold Schwarzenegger. You think that because they played these roles on TV that they can play any role at all. They don't really have to have any common sense. Anyway, that's my little rant for the evening. Things are going to get a lot worse. I pray that people pull out from the nosedive. You know, as Burry said about the market, he said it's watching a plane crash. This is the only preparation is spiritual preparation. In my opinion, the only preparation is to be building your life on the rock, the cornerstone, the truth, and the light. And the darkness is not going to see the light. If you're in the darkness, you won't be able to comprehend the truth. All right, amen. Pray, 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 pray. I pray for everyone. God bless you all.